All in Sports Network. We love sports.
Well, it is Saturday, September 14th, and it is a bittersweet Saturday for Longhorn fans and college football as a whole, as the Texas Longhorns currently, as we are recording this, lead 49-7, about 8:15 remaining. Trey Owens is in the game. Arch has played phenomenal. However, Quinn Ewers is out with an abdominal strain. We don't know the severity of it. We've done our own research to try to see how long he may be out. It is going to be a few weeks. That's all we know at the very least, depending on how severe or how minor that injury might be. But again, Texas well ahead of UTSA right now, comfortably late into the fourth quarter. I'm Tanner Carlson along with Jake Jimerson. This is our immediate reaction. We do have the game on live. We'll give updates as we have them. But this is All in Horns, Sports Media Network. We appreciate our Rogue Sports Network here on YouTube, where all podcasts can be listened to, as well as Spotify and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Like, share, subscribe. We are here for your daily fix, and this is our immediate reaction of the Texas UTSA game. Like I said, bittersweet, Jake. Quinn goes down first quarter, has a few drives, looks good, has a few touchdown scoring drives. Arch comes in immediately. First play comes in, touchdown, 19-yard strike to DeAndre Moore. And then 2 plays later on offense, Arch has a 67-yard touchdown run for a touchdown going into half, 28-7, and then now has just kind of methodically – he's 9 of 12, 4 touchdown passes on the day. Looks good, looks everything we want Arch to be. Again, there's the sweet moment. The bitter part is Quinn. Talk a little bit about what you feel like the quarterback situation would be without Quinn going in with Arch for an extended amount of time in this season.
Yeah, I mean, there's always the outside chance that it is season ending. It is possible if it is a tear. I'm not sure, I imagine they're going to do a scan on it and try to check if it's a tear. If it's a tear, he could be out for the season. And obviously we really hope it is not that, because in my opinion with Arch, they can still be a 10-win football team, but I think their ability to win a national title is certainly goes into much more question than it is currently. And so it almost takes them from a national title contending team to more of a, hopefully they're in the playoffs team, because as good as Arch looked, he did have a couple moments where you could see the internal clock's not quite there yet. There's going to be growing pains with an Arch Manning. And when you got an OU in Georgia back-to-back on the schedule, if he has to play both those games, your chances of winning both of those drop dramatically, and your chances of winning both of those, even with Quinn, isn't necessarily super high, because that's 2 really high caliber teams back to back. But it's just it's the first bittersweet podcast for us, the first one where it's a little bit of a somber feeling, because I think most fans who are educated in the sport and watch a lot of football and understand how leadership works and how kind of earning your stripes work, know that Quinn, regardless of Arch and the hype behind him and how he looks, they know Quinn is the leader of this football program. He is what makes this team go, and the team swarms around him. And yes, Arch is a leader too, and the team loves him, and all the reports are great in the locker room with him. But as soon as Quinn's healthy, he's QB1. He's back in the lineup. And so it's just a little bit of a sad feeling. I feel bad for Quinn. He's worked really hard to get his body into a spot where he felt like he wouldn't have to deal with some of these injuries. And just every year he's had some type of injury early in the season. And, it's been, can he get back for OU, or, when he missed a couple games last year. And so I just feel bad for Quinn, because Quinn's just become such a legend for us, within Texas football. He's kind of brought Texas back, and you don't want to see anyone get hurt, but seeing Quinn get hurt this year just feels really sour.
Well, he's also, a Heisman favorite through 2 weeks of football. He's looked great. And I think what he provides that Arch isn't this year going to provide is just that experience and that ability to read the defense and to not get overly critical or get too down in a bad moment. And you have a bad interception and you're able to turn it around, turn it into a touchdown drive, and kind of overcome those adversities that are inevitably going to happen throughout the season. Arch went in there 2 out of his first 3 plays were touchdowns, and it was like, okay, cool, I can do this. I'm feeling myself a little bit. That's not going to be the case against Georgia. That's not going to be a case against an OU. That's not going to be the case going into Fayetteville, into Arkansas, in a hostile environment. If he has to play at a point to where he's playing in College Station in Texas A&M, what happens whenever you go 3 and out to start out? A&M has a good maybe scoring drive. They come out and you have a turnover on the second drive, and now you're just rattled, and you're just – in those moments, Quinn is gotten to a point where he's so cool, calm, collected, where nothing too high is going to get a big head, and then nothing too low is going to bring him down to where he can't overcome that adversity, whether that be in the game, from week to week, whatever that is. And I think it's going to be those moments in the season, regardless of how long or how short of a time period Quinn is out. The crazy thing about this injury is any research that I've done just from me being on my couch with Google, with no doctorate degree, nothing that involves any type of medical field training whatsoever. I have learned through the brief, 2.5 hours of research, this is typically an injury that happens to athletes in the field of golf and baseball. There is a baseball golf injury if it's an abdominal strain, something to do with your obliques as well. But it's that the furthermost layer of tissue of muscle that's kind of protecting your organs, and that got strained. If it's severe, it could be 6 to 8 weeks. If it's a tear, it could be a few months. If it's a minor strain, it can be a couple of weeks, and maybe he is back by OU. Maybe it's by the bye week he feels good. That's unknown at this moment in time, and I don't even know really how you get to a point of diagnosing that. I'm sure x-rays will play a part in it. I'm not sure how the diagnosis really will come down to it, but it seems you can just tell, he probably spent that extra time in the tent crying or, getting his emotions out before he was ready to confront, the sidelines and walking into the locker room with the team. And it seems as though every time they show him on the sideline, he just kind of looks a little somber. He knows that it's not the best situation to be in.
Yeah, he probably already knows he's going to be out a couple weeks. And, for him, this being the year he's really worked towards and feels like he has a chance to go to New York for the Heisman, at the very least to be in the running to win it and get to go to New York. And also, to have national championship hopes, and now for that to be out of his control. And I'm sure he trusts Arch to come in and play well, but I can just imagine the emotions that he was feeling. And it's a tough loss for the team. You felt the team kind of reel a little bit there, because we kind of talked about it right at the end of half. You were kind of signaling timeout, because UTSA had failed a 3rd down conversion. There's about 35 seconds left roughly. And I think if Quinn was healthy, even in this exact game situation, he would have called a timeout. Or if Arch was already the QB going into it, he would have called a timeout. But they were reeling a little bit, because it wasn't just Quinn. You had Kelvin Banks go down. He returned to the game. He looked good when he returned, but still he went down. You had Malik Muhammad go down. You had Wisner get a little pinged up. I mean, it was a not fun first half, despite being up 28-7, because so many guys were just going there for a few possessions. It felt like every play, a key, contributor for the Longhorns was going down on the field. And, I just think I think Sark felt the team, and he was like, we need to get into the locker room. I need to talk to my guys, get everyone calmed down. He might have chewed into him a little bit. He did not seem happy because they weren't really playing their best. I think it's probably their C game at best. And I think he just wanted to get into that locker room and talk to the guys. And then they did come out in the second half and made sure to put the game away immediately.
I think that's a really good point you make and I want to dive into that a little bit more than, just the quarterback situation. Yes, that is the main headline, and we will talk about that at length in this episode, and then probably really throughout all of next week going into ULM. Sark's demand for perfection and acknowledging, I think, just by his demeanor on the sideline, his facial expressions, his body language, he was not happy with that first half performance. I don't think he's been happy this entire game. I mean, your backup came in, your team has responded relatively well to a backup coming in, putting a game away, putting a team away that you should beat handedly. But I don't think Sark at any point in this game is going to go back and be real happy with the way this team has performed.
Yeah, I mean, the start, I think he'll be happy with. UTSA went 3 and out right away. They went right down the field and scored and took a 7-0 lead. Quinn had a really bad pick. He recovered well after that. But yeah, really after those first couple drives where everything went perfect, there was just some sloppiness. There were some penalties. There were some mental errors. Quinn gets hurt. Maybe, even though they scored right away after Quinn got hurt, you could feel the defense, their intensity kind of slipped a little bit after the injury. When the, UTSA gets the ball, they get the long run play for a touchdown. Then they were driving the next drive. They ended up missing a field goal. And so, there was just kind of a mental lapse from the team for a 3 or 4 possession stretch on both sides of the ball where it's, they're reeling a little bit. They've seen a bunch of their guys go down. I'm sure seeing Quinn go down was really hard on the team, but I think Sark, he wants this program to be in spot where it's our guys down. Okay. Next, you're sad about it. You don't like to see it, but it can't affect the play on the field. Because if you're going against a Georgia, despite how they're looking tonight, they're currently trailing on the road at Kentucky in the third quarter. If you're against a Georgia, if you're against an OU and one of your key guys goes down and you have a 5-minute lapse, that 5-minute lapse might cost you the game.
You're exactly right. And I think something about demanding this perfection, especially through the talk throughout the whole week, and you and I hit on it in his press conference, 60 minutes of hell. This was not 60 minutes of hell by any stretch of the imagination. And yes, we sound maybe a little bit down and out for a 49-7 victory at home. Week 3, starting quarterback goes down, your backup comes in, and your backup gets 4 touchdowns, passing ball, and then a rushing touchdown as well. That all sounds well and fine and good. But I think this is a little bit of a frustrating week for the Longhorns. And now, we talked about it as well. It's okay for Sark to be that way. For fans, we can appreciate, cool, Arch played well. It was exciting to see him. To be overcritical of some certain things, we're doing it for a podcast. But as a fan, we still need to remember, okay, this is a very good football team. There's no reason to hit the panic button. As long as we got ULM next week, Arch is playing the way he's playing, and the fans on the screen, Georgia wants us on the cell phone. But being able to just kind of be level-headed in a moment of, yeah, we didn't play our best game. Quinn got hurt. Arch came in. Arch did look phenomenal at times, but he did look like a freshman quarterback playing his first game in a starting role.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. He's playing a role of the starter. He's not the starter, but he is playing the role of the starter. And there were moments where he's holding on to the ball a little bit too long. He's going through his progressions a little bit slow. And that's okay.
Didn't see the delayed blitz. That was a big one.
And so there's definitely times where you're seeing those sorts of things. And again, ULM is a worse program than UTSA. I'm not necessarily worried about them. Mississippi State is getting steamrolled by Toledo right now. And so I'm not necessarily concerned about Mississippi State either. Then you get a bye week. So that's the rest of this week. You get ULM, you've got Mississippi State, and you've got a bye week, and then Oklahoma in 4 weeks. We'll know a lot about this team by then.
And OU looked much better today. The offense still having issues, but, they handled Tulane at home. Got a little close there towards the end, but I picked them to lose that game, so I got to give them props. They came out. They improved from the last 2 weeks, and their defense does look very good. And so that's if Arch is starting in that game with the emotions that go on in that stadium, and luckily he's been at least in the stadium for one of those matchups. But I think we both want Quinn back for that game. He has the experience in that game. Your first start in the Red River rivalry is pretty brutal, and Jackson Arnold will be making his first start as well. But I think that's a game, we want Texas to win rather handedly this year. And I think for that to happen, you're going to need Quinn Ewers in at quarterback. And so that's going to be a lot of the discussion over these next few weeks is, we're going to be digging and trying to get, what the most recent updates are on Quinn. And we're going to keep, keep kind of moving along the same way, talking about, what's the game plan going to be? How does Texas win the game? And luckily, like you said, we have a couple weeks of what should be some cushion and a bye week in there. But, the one thing I would say, and just add on to what you said, is, this is Sark's job to be, upset at certain things with this performance. Don't go on social media and bash players. Don't go on social media and say the team doesn't look good. I saw some of that in the second quarter, and I'm like, we're up 28-7. They lost the court? The quarterback went down. They had some other guys going down. They're college kids. It affects the way you play. And Sark doesn't want to see that, but as fans, you got to give a little leeway. I mean, Georgia's not looking perfect. Every team has flaws.
I'll say this much is about their kids playing football. Yeah, but they're adults with a lot of responsibility that they've been able to hold. Now, I will say, and some people even take it a step further. They're getting paid to play football. They're almost considered professionals at this point. They're not, but that's what some of the arguments will be. I think the players can handle criticism whenever criticism is warranted and it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary to criticize this football program at this point in the season and playing the way that they played. They had a couple of hiccups in the first half of play where you have already mentioned a lot of injuries took place. Things weren't really running as smoothly as you wanted them to run, but that's okay. You're still up by 3-4 possessions. You've got a very big, comfortable lead. You're fine. There's nothing there. Any reason to hit a panic button, you're just overreacting at this point. Like, there's no reason to go on a oh, I can't wait till Arch Manning's the starting quarterback because Quinn just can't get it done. And then he goes down, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe we do need Quinn if we're going to be a national championship contender. Okay, well, then just don't say it in the first place. All right? Like, don't try not to overreact to an extreme level. Now, when things are warranted, like Florida State fans, they can be upset with players right now. Florida State fans can be upset with the way their team is playing. That's warranted. Texas is the number 2 team in the country. They're playing like a number 2 team in the country through 3 weeks of football.
Yeah, main thing was it wasn't a 14-7 game. It wasn't a 10-7 game. If it was a competitive game, I would have understood some of the criticisms. It was a 28-7 game.
It wasn't even Wyoming.
No, it wasn't even Wyoming from last year. It wasn't Houston from last year. I mean, to me, this is still just showing the continued development of the program. A year ago when they were playing their C game and they were kind of playing down to their opponent, it ended in a 1-possession game against Houston. It ended in having to pull away in the fourth quarter against the Wyoming at home. It ended in, ugly wins against K-State where you let them come back regardless of if you have a backup QB in. It kind of ugly win against BYU. Now, even though it's UTSA and UTSA may be worse than all those teams I listed, still, they were dominating the game. The game was never even remotely in doubt. As far as expectations of them to go out there and crush UTSA, they achieved all those. It just wasn't the prettiest crushing.
That's a great way to put it. It wasn't the most flashy. It's not 65-0 at halftime, Tennessee, Kent State. Like, I understand, like, you wanted Texas to go out there, assert their dominance, and just look like Alabama playing, Prairie View A&M. Like, I understand that's what you wanted to see. It didn't happen. It was a little fluky in the first half, but again, at no point in this game did it feel as though Texas was in trouble or in a threat of losing or it even really being all that close. At no point in this game. It didn't necessarily look and feel as smooth as maybe you wanted it to, but that's the expectation you've set in your own brain. That has nothing to do with the players on the field. You had an expectation going into a football game as a fan that, hey, it should look a certain way, and it didn't look that way. I don't know what else you want to do. Again, that's Sark's job. He probably maybe feels the same way, but it's Sark's job to get them prepared and ready to go for ULM now.
Yeah, it's fans' jobs to be fans. And, we kind of, and it looks like Texas scored again, so it's 56-7 now. But so it's 56-7. I mean, this is ultimately a great performance at the end of the day, or maybe not a great performance, but a dominating performance, where you win big. But I kind of wanted to touch a little bit just on how Arch looked and what we want to see from him moving forward. And we were kind of talking about it, being able to watch the game in person, which was a nice luxury this weekend, even with the injuries. Man, I love watching him on the run. I like rolling him out. He's fast. He showed some of the wheels on the 67-yard touchdown, but that throw on the run to I think it was Wingo was great. Obviously, the touchdown pass to I think it was Cook. Was an absolute dime. Arch had a couple freshman moments, and that's kind of what we touched on. He also has some moments where he shows this is why I was a perfectly rated 5-star quarterback coming out of high school, and it's not just because of the name, folks.
He's not a 3-star player with a 5-star name.
No.
He's not that guy. He is that guy. He's not that guy. He is that guy. Yeah. I mean, Arch, I think, is going to be just fine in terms of his talent and his ability to make plays, move the ball down the field, score touchdowns, put points on the board for Texas, win against ULM. I have no doubt in my mind. My feeling going into ULM is the same feeling that I had with Quinn at quarterback going into ULM. I have no hesitation in saying Texas will go out and dominate against ULM, and that's how it should be, regardless of who's playing quarterback. I think Arch looks very comfortable whenever he's rolling out and he extends the pocket with his feet and he extends the play with his legs, and it gives him just a little bit more time to diagnose what the defense is doing and make his reads down the field, because I think that's one step where he is just half a second slower than Quinn, is diagnosing what the defense is giving him, an RPO look, late read, and those, if they're just a half a second too late and you're just delayed just a moment, the whole play can be thrown off and it not work the way it's designed to work. And I think that's where Arch is going to develop, and he'll get there. I'm not concerned about him getting there or not. It's currently where he is now, and that's just what we've seen against UTSA.
Yeah, I mean, Quinn was, even last year, he was just a split hair of a second slow sometimes. And I think Arch is already more to the level of a Quinn Ewers last year versus a Quinn Ewers his first year starting. I think Arch is much more advanced than what we, saw from Quinn in his first year. And so that, shows the continued growth of the program and having guys who can come in. Trey Owens had a couple nice looking throws when he came in. The future of this Texas program continues to be bright. The future of this year continues to be bright. But I'm going to be just curious to see. And, we're going to look back at this game. We're probably going to watch every single play Arch was in over again. I'm going to be curious to see what the game plan is going to be with Arch in versus Quinn. I do think the game plan will change some. We'll kind of discuss as this next week goes on, what do we think the game plan is going to look like? And then we'll kind of diagnose what it looks like after the game against Louisiana Monroe. If anything, it gives us some more talking points over the next week than maybe we would have had.
You're exactly right. It's kind of good for our podcast, not good for the Texas. Well, it's not good. Arch is going to be just fine. Again, I'm not necessarily concerned. The game did just go final, 56-7. Texas wins over UTSA. They're talking to Sark right now. I was trying to hear a little bit about what kind of the team feel was after Quinn went down into the locker room going into halftime, what was said to him and things like that. But I think Sark just knows where this team is, and I think he's comfortable with the team. He's got a pulse on it. He could kind of feel. That's why he took it into halftime and didn't call that timeout. He kind of knew where the team was. They maybe were a little bit rattled, a little bit thrown off of their vibe and their aura and the energy they had going into the game. Was able to calm them down, able to get them back pumped up, ready to go for Arch. And this team rallies around Arch. I think that's another big thing that we haven't really talked about with Arch Manning, is that this team this isn't like a jealousy. Oh my gosh, you're Arch Manning. You're just handed the keys. This isn't a Chris Sims situation. He earned it. He's the QB2. He deserves to be at the University of Texas. He has worked his ass off to get to where he is. It's not just a name. And I think he's earned the respect that way with the locker room, and they play for him. And if you get a quarterback where your team can rally behind him, starter, backup, whatever, that is just as important of just you're a talented guy going out there to play football.
Yeah, and I was kind of trying to catch what Sark was saying. I couldn't hear anything. We'll go back and listen to it, but he didn't look happy. No. And I don't think he was necessarily thrilled with that performance. And I think that's going to be something to look out for next week. I think this team is going to come out with a fire next week to show that they are still the number 2 team in the nation, regardless of if a backup quarterback is in. And so if anything, I may be even a little more excited for next week with this week's performance, because I think they're going to really come out and try to make a point with Arch in at quarterback. And I think Sarkisian is going to be able to do the most coaching he has done this season after a game. Granted, it's only the 3rd game, but I think coming out of the Michigan game, there was a lot of, just positive things. I know there was definitely some things he could see on film to coach up, but I think the film room session, he's going to have it directed to be a little less fun. When they go in for film tomorrow and Monday, I think he's going to have a lot of plays bookmarked. That's like, what are we doing here? This is not Longhorn football. This is not the effort I want to see. I even saw Anthony Hill on one play, and this was after the Quinn injury, and when the defense was kind of letting them move down the field just a little bit. There's really only 2 possessions where that happened, and Anthony Hill kind of let up a little bit where he would have gotten a tackle if he kept sprinting like we've seen him all last year and in the first 2 weeks. And so I think he's going to pull up a lot of plays where he goes, this is not how we play football. And that team's going to be revved up to play come next Saturday.
Now, granted, we did say that against UTSA, like come out the same way you came out against Michigan and dominate. And it maybe would have been that way had Quinn not had the injury, maybe. But it's still, some things felt still a little bit off. I still don't think, regardless of Quinn being injured in the first half, that Sark was necessarily thrilled with the performance from his team in that first quarter when Quinn was playing, not to the perfection that he kind of expects and demands from his team. And I'm with you. I think he's going to come out and really have more of a business-like mentality. It's not going to be a celebratory mentality, maybe like it was coming off of the Michigan game. I think it's definitely going to be more of this is a business mentality. We're going into ULM and we're going to dominate, and we're going to show the country that we're the number 2 team in the country. And I think we kind of saw this mind shift last year towards the end of the season, getting closer and closer to that Big 12 championship. And I think it was even after the OU game where the trajectory of this team, and I think it was really the K-State game that flipped it. I think the K-State game, it was kind of an ugly game. It was a close win, but man, after that, it was just big win after big win. And then the Texas Tech game happened, and then Oklahoma State happened, and you're just dominating teams, and you're starting to see this team consistently put it together. This might be a moment where Sark can maybe use a little bit of that to re-motivate his team.
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the film from the UTSA game, and I haven't, rewatched it yet, but I can tell you right now, they play like they did against UTSA, against even in Oklahoma, who, while they've had their struggles on the field, we both know how that game goes. They very well could not win that game if they play like they did tonight. And luckily, if Arch is playing, you're going to have a whole week to prepare with him. And there's variables there that hopefully don't happen against an OU, but he's going to be able to show the film and go, look, we were playing against UTSA, and that's why this stuff flew. But if you're playing against even a Mississippi State, who at least has more talent out there, I know they're getting rolled at night by Toledo, but you have to always assume you're going to get every single team's best performance when you're playing them, especially at the University of Texas. And if they play like they did tonight, they're going to struggle in some games that they shouldn't this year, with a Kentucky, a Vanderbilt, obviously, and the obvious ones are A&M, OU, and Georgia. But I'd like to see them come out against ULM and be up 35-42 zip at halftime, have that type of game where they end up scoring, over 60 and kind of make a real statement that we're good.
Yeah, and I think that it needs to be that. But I also just think, where this Texas team can go with Arch is still competing for an SEC title. I really do believe that. I mean, you get Arch week in, week out, preparing as though he's the starter, getting starter reps in practice. Now teams will start watching film. They'll start knowing some tendencies. They'll start getting to know him a little bit better as a player in terms of preparation. And Brent Venables and Kirby Smart, the defensive minds in the SEC that we still have to go against, that's not going to be an easy task for an Arch Manning to go against those defensive-minded coaches. But I still think Texas is in a very good spot to continue the season that they're having with Arch at the helm. And this Quinn injury doesn't seem, at least on the surface, that it's a season-ending, like extremely long-term injury. But when he comes back, is it going to be a lingering injury? Is it going to be something that is going to hamper his performance in the future? We don't know that. That's obviously not something we can know. Nobody can know until that we get to that point in time. But you're just hoping that, again, same old adage, hopefully Quinn is back by OU and you can go into that week with a fully healthy squad following the bye week, kind of recuperate, get your mindset back together as we are now national championship contenders. Because with Arch, I don't know if you just are that favorite that you were going in just yesterday.
You aren't, because there's a lot of unknown variables, and I know we're starting to get over time, but last thing I want to say is that, these are our true live reactions from a game, because despite the fact that it was ultimately an ass kicking on the scoreboard, we're pretty somber right now. This is the least excited we've been after a game by far. And it's just because that's how much we like Quinn Ewers and how much we consider him the heartbeat of this team, the soul of this team. And it affects us that he got hurt, and it makes the game feel different. I wouldn't even say we're somber because they didn't play their best game. I think the reason for the tone of the way this podcast has been is because of Quinn Ewers getting hurt. And I think that's what happened to the team there for, a stretch of time when he went down, as they kind of felt the emotions that we feel.
That's perfectly said. I don't want to add anything else to it because, I couldn't have said it any better myself, because it is we just love Quinn, and I root for Quinn, and I've rooted for him, since really the turnaround of Texas that he's been a part of. And it sucks to see a Heisman favorite and what's probably going to be his last college football season. And it's going to be derailed by this injury. It just sucks to see. So with that being said, all in horns, all new episode coming out Tuesday. We will be giving you all the updates and our thoughts as the week progresses, and any updates on Quinn, we will be right on top of it. But this is All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. And as always, with a 52-7 victory. Is that right?
56-7.
56-7 victory. Hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.